Welcome back to the Washington Reporter podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Wohl. We've got Ernie Varitimos here as well. As always, Ernie, how's it going?
A little wonky, but other than that, I'm okay.
Well, it's always a little wonky up in Massachusetts, if you ask me, but weather's beautiful down here in Southern California. We have a jam-packed show today. I mean, I'm talking absolutely jam-packed, and we're going to be taking your calls later in the show. So stand by. We've got it all set up. We've got the number. I don't care if you're liberal, conservative, you name it. We're going to be taking your calls. It's going to be a lot of fun. So you've got to stay tuned for that.
That's because we have no call screener.
Right. We've got no call screener. So, we're going to get a little bit of everything, I'm sure, a little bit of lunacy. And, just remember, if you act like a dope, it reflects on you, not us, really. So that's really
we started the whole thing.
Yeah, well, I don't know. We'll see how it goes. So it should be a lot of fun. Bottom line, should be a lot of fun. We'll see what happens. We've got a live chat going. We've got so far a couple of people watching, and like I said, we're going to be taking your calls. I don't think that you can afford to miss this one. It's going to be a jam-packed show. So let's jump in. We've got a lot to talk about, okay? Trump continues to live rent-free in the heads of liberals, including many of you watching right now. They're melting down. Here we are. It's June 2018, and liberals are still melting down. They're accusing Trump of colluding with a porn star's lawyer. They're calling the president's daughter the C word. Mueller has failed to turn up even 1 ounce of collusion, and now he's trying to confiscate everybody's cell phones. And this is some sort of $17 million hall monitor mission that just keeps going on and finds nothing and writes no tickets and finds not so much as a jaywalking charge that involves any Russians. They've accused Trump of, beating up and hiding Melania, the first lady, the most magnificent first lady of all time, sending her away, except she was there just last week. Meanwhile, Trump's going to coast across the world. He's in Canada today. He's negotiating better trade deals at the G7. We've got unemployment at 3.8%, record low unemployments for blacks and Hispanics. We've got an economy that's positively booming, and liberals continue to melt down and continue their rampage and their fake news tirade across our great country. So we're going to talk about all of it. We're going to give you the comprehensive look from Russia to Stormy to you name it. We're going to be talking about all of it, and it's going to be something that really you just can't afford to miss. So you've got to stay tuned. Ernie, what are you watching? What's out there? What is the news that I'm missing? I mean, we've got a jam-packed show as we wait for everybody to crowd in, and like I said, we're going to be taking everybody's calls today. It should be a lot of fun. But what are you watching? What's on your mind up there in Boston, Massachusetts?
Well, the biggest thing that's on my mind is this disconnect with the Speaker of the House and our favorite congressman, who I'm sorry, hold on,
Devin Nunes.
No. Trey Gowdy. I'm sorry, I just got distracted. Trey Gowdy and Speaker Ryan, who are now, for some reason, supporting the Democratic cause by saying that they feel that the FBI has done everything on the up and up, that there was no spying, that somehow everything is okay. They were doing everything by the book without any factual information. And on top of that, with Comey already admitting to spying on the Trump campaign. I don't get it. Where are they coming from?
Well, this is, you're talking about a couple of deep state congressmen, although I have posed a theory, and I think it's one that continues to be, at least viable, which is the idea that perhaps Trey Gowdy is being a shoo-in to replace Jeff Sessions as Attorney General. And perhaps he's trying to ingratiate himself with the Department of Justice ahead of this move. That way he can make it through confirmation hearings.
Well, yeah, but what about Ryan? Now, see, the one thing that I see that they have in common is that they're both leaving after this term. And
right.
So I'm thinking that, well, maybe they're trying to soften the leave to kind of open up opportunities.
Right. Well, it certainly could be. I wouldn't put that past them.
But it seems like an about face with Trey. That doesn't compute, because for the longest time he seemed to be all over this stuff and really a wonk, really trying to nail this collusion stuff down.
Well,
Eh,
here's something really interesting, okay, that I think is important to follow. Just this week, we learned that Mitch McConnell has postponed or canceled basically the recess that was coming up for the Senate. And a lot of Republicans, including Trump, have said, well, this is good. This means that, basically what they're going to do is force the Democrats to work, and they're going to execute Trump's agenda. They're going to, they're going to put his nominees through. They're going to do all these things. They're going to make law. They're going to actually work. You see, I think that Mitch McConnell's trying to do something very different. I think what Mitch McConnell's trying to do with this recess is he is trying to prevent Trump from replacing Jeff Sessions. You see, if the Senate went on recess, Trump could do something called a recess appointment, meaning he could fire Sessions, he could put in Gowdy or put in someone else and not have any confirmation hearings, period. He could do the same thing for Secretary of State. He can do it for a lot of different positions, constitutionally speaking. So it's something that I think basically Mitch McConnell, the neocon establishment, is trying to do to prevent Trump from getting rid of Sessions. That's my opinion about this whole move. I think they're trying to protect this guy. The neocon, that's just my take. Again, it's just my 2 cents.
right.
But we've got a lot to talk about. And, what I want to sort of tie into here is what we just saw this Tuesday, because I think it's a huge deal. What we saw this Tuesday is the opposite of a blue wave. What we saw this Tuesday is a red wave. We saw a red wave. We saw in California record high Republican turnout and record low Democrat turnout. Where is this enthused base of Democrats? Where were they? They're nowhere to be found. Coast to coast. Coast to coast. I've got a couple examples to talk about here. Let's look at California, okay? And we can talk about the gubernatorial race. We can talk about a couple of House seats. But I think there's a use case, a case study on the lack of a blue wave that is even more interesting. And that is these DA races. George Soros himself is very open, okay? LA Times reported on it. No conspiracy theory, nothing like that. George Soros himself reported that he was dumping money into these DA races. You could see it. They were taking money from him. He was trying to get district attorneys in that were pro-Soros, that were pro-left, that wouldn't prosecute drug crimes, that would let everybody out of jail. The standard left-wing agenda that's soft on crime, soft on MS-13.
Progressives. That was the key word. He was looking for progressives.
Progressives, right. Exactly right. That was the key word for our good buddy, our good pal, George Soros.
It's a great euphemism.
He poured millions of dollars into this race. Millions of dollars into races all across the state of California and others places that were DA's races. And what did we see? We saw that all of that money he poured in had absolutely zero impact. None. It had no impact. He gave district attorney candidates millions of dollars, and it had zero impact. They advertised, they had their signs, they had this, they had that. It made no impact. Really, really fascinating. I think there's another interesting use case for this lack of a blue wave that we saw just this week. On Tuesday, New Jersey Senator Bob Menendez, who was indicted for, among corruption and other things, actually accused but not indicted for having sex with underage teens in Haiti and in the Dominican Republic. Prosecutors for the federal government formally accused this senator of going down there and enlisting child sex slaves overseas. He's a beleaguered candidate. There's no doubt about it. But he's got money, and he's got the support of the Democrat Party. Bernie Sanders loves him. Everybody loves him. So Bob Menendez faced off in the Democrat primary against a woman who had raised less than $5,000. In fact, she had raised so little money that and put so little money of her own money into this, she didn't even have to fill out an FEC disclosure. She had no money. But let's look at what happened. Bob Menendez won. He beat her. Okay, right? He had millions of dollars in his campaign, super PACs, DNC support, celebrities, you name it. He did the whole thing. But this woman who had less than $5,000 still got 40% of the vote. 40% of the vote. What does that tell you about Bob Menendez's chances coming up in November? He went against a woman who had less than $5,000 and she got 40% of the vote. He barely won. It's not looking good, folks. It's not looking good for the Democrats. This blue wave that they keep talking about doesn't seem to be materializing. Ernie, what are you seeing? Are they enthused? Are they out there? Are they active? I mean, they march, they yell.
What I haven't seen, it's more the absence of what's out there. What you haven't seen are any real reportings through mainstream media about the likely voters and what the balance is now coming into this midterm election, because they were doing it, almost on a daily basis up until about maybe a week or two ago. Now you don't hear anything. So the only thing that I can surmise from that is that the reports or the polls are not good.
Well, the polls are notoriously bad. We know that much. These polls get, they oversample plus 10, plus 15 for Democrats in many cases. You look at the polling methodology.
Sure.
You have all kinds of biases and all kinds of statistical anomalies that can't be accounted for in polls. The New York Times, the pollster extraordinaires, gave Donald J. Trump just a 2% chance of winning the election. In fact, they said, it's so likely that Hillary's going to win. It's so easy for her to win. It's going to be like the chance of her missing a 5-yard field goal if she loses. That's what they said. That's what they said. Folks, if you're just tuning in, you're listening to the Washington Reporter podcast. I'm Jacob Wohl. We're here with Ernie Varitimos. As always, we're going to be taking your calls later in the show. I want to give you the number to call in. You can queue up. You can get ready, but we're not going to take your calls quite yet. You got to stay tuned. The number to call in is 803-258-0154. That's 803-258-0154. We're going to be taking your calls, your questions, your comments, whatever you've got, liberal, conservative, you name it. We're taking your calls at 803-258-0154. This is the Washington Reporter podcast. Ernie Varitimos and Jacob Wohl. Jam-packed show. But what we saw on Tuesday is no blue wave. No blue wave at all. So I want to get into this report. I was reading the news, as I'm sure many people were yesterday, and I read a report that Obama ordered banks to work with Iran, despite the fact that they were under sanctions. Sanctions that were passed with a veto-proof majority by the Senate and the House. In other words, Obama had no say in these sanctions. It's not as if he came up with them and then he could reverse them and choose when to enforce them. These were sanctions that were passed with a veto-proof majority. And he went ahead and he said, Iran, go ahead, do whatever you want. And he said to the banks, you need to do business with Iran or you're going to get hit with fines. Now, in many cases, these banks refused. They were too worried. They said, is this a setup? What's going on? Is this a sting operation? Ernie, did you see this report? I mean, what were you thinking about this? It's wild.
I didn't see the actual report, but I saw it through Garrison Cartoons that he was making a big deal out of it. So I saw it sort of secondhand. What I don't understand is that how he actually under what channels did he use to set these deals up?
Well, here's how I understand it. Barack Obama called up the Bank of Muscat in Oman, a Gulf nation. And this bank had notoriously done some business with Iran in the past. And he said, okay, Iran wants to convert 2.5 billion rial. It was $2.5 billion worth of rial to US dollars and then into euros. You couldn't do it directly to euros. You had to switch to dollars because it's pegged to dollars, and then you could switch to euros. And the bank said, no, we can't do it. Sorry, Iran, you're under sanctions. We can't help you. Iran went to several other banks. They said, we can't help you. You're under sanctions. We don't want to get fined. We don't want to get put out of business. And then Iran put in a call to Barack Hussein Obama. And what happened? The Department of the Treasury, the IRS, and the State Department reached out to these banks and ordered them to do the trade, to help out Iran, to make it happen. Simultaneously to this, you had ransom payments going to Iran. You had cash showing up by the boatload on C-130, jumbo jet freighters on pallets in all different currencies and gold as well. That's what you had going on. And
This,
so
this is treasonous, isn't it?
it's treasonous. This is collusion. This is the collusion. We found the collusion. They got him dead to rights. This is a Senate report. It's bipartisan. This is treason. We're talking about the world's #1 state sponsor of terror. And Obama, at a minimum, was so eager to get this Iran deal signed that he flew over cash, that he ordered banks to violate sanctions that were passed by our Congress with a veto-proof majority, and made Iran very rich. Ultimately, what he did. And, people talk about frozen assets and, that's Iran's money. You don't get it, Jacob. It's Iran's money. Well, no. If it was Iran's money, but we took it because they were committing terrorism, whose money is it now? That's right. It's ours. It's like if the IRS takes your house. It's their house now. It's not your house anymore. So what did Obama do? Well, we had seized $400 million from Iran 30 some odd years ago. Obama paid them back the money with 20% interest.
Interest?
20% interest compounded. The money was now worth over $150 billion with a B. It was sent via wire transfer to the Central Bank of Iran, where it's now being deployed to build nuclear weapons, to build submarines, to build ICBMs, to fund Hezbollah, to fund Hamas, you name it.
Why did he calculate interest?
Well, they asked for it.
20%. This is just beyond.
This is beyond the pale. It's beyond the pale. It is, frankly, unbelievable. Unbelievable. Well, I want to hear what you guys.
Why isn't he in shackles right now? Why?
That's what I say. Why is he not at Guantanamo Bay? There are people that have no, but there are people that have done far less.
Oh yeah,
that have been swept up by the CIA for doing material support to terrorism, right? Material support to ISIS, you name it. They get swept up and they go to Gitmo. Now the argument might be, well, if Obama's a U.S. citizen, he can't go to Gitmo. Well, I don't know. Do you think his birth certificate's going to hold up in court? It's an open question. It is. It's an open question.
No, the whole birth certificate thing. I've got a whole nother story on that, but it's just amazing to me that they never really introspected or really did any kind of thorough examination of that birth certificate, because I did back then, and I don't know what you've heard or whatever, but I was a multimedia expert, or I have been. I mean, I ran a consulting company for a long time. And I took the PDF document that they had on the White House Gov website, and I downloaded it. It was the actual birth certificate. And if you then put it through some PostScript software, which kind of deconstructs it,
right,
you could clearly see that this document was completely forged.
Well, I don't know about PostScript software, and I don't know about After Effects or forgeries or anything else. But here's
let me give you some examples. You could see that there were blocks of text that didn't match up with the same font that was used, I don't know, 45 years ago.
Right.
Because it was modern day fonts. It wasn't something that was printed from a typewriter. That were inserted in over other pieces of information. I'm sorry, I'm going a little off track, but it has always bothered me that it was a clear forgery that I saw very clearly, and I know that other people had also deconstructed it before, but it never came out. It was as if they completely ignored what was evidence that was right in front of your face.
Well, here's what I do know. I interviewed Malik Obama on this very show. People can go back and they can listen to the archive.
His brother.
This is Barack Obama's brother, and I posed the question. I didn't pull any punches. I just said, hey, where was your brother born? He said, hey, this is well known. He was born in Indonesia. I've seen his Indonesian birth certificate. This is well known in the family. That's where he was born. grew up there, moved to Hawaii when he was a little bit older. This is just well known. This is just fact. It's well known within the Obama family, and yet it's considered a racist. I don't know how it's racist. What's racist about it?
Well,
There's something
everything
racist.
that we're saying right now, we're going to be labeled absolute nut jobs. All right. Now, see, what you're saying is you're getting it directly from a family member. And what I'm saying is that I looked at the actual document and was able to pull it apart using regular, freely available software and see clearly that it was put together. And yet everybody will look at us and say that we're just conspiracy wonks, that we're completely off our, our rockers, that, this is all bull and, we're just making all this crap up. But it's actual evidence, and it was completely ignored by the mainstream media.
But what do people want me to do? Do you want me to lie? Because I could tell you that his brother told me he was born in the US, but that's not what he told me. The record is very clear. But this is well known. So we're preaching to the choir here.
Yeah.
But that's what his brother said. That's all I'm saying. I don't know. I wasn't there, but that's what his brother told me. And it's on the podcast. It's on the record. You can go back and see it. That's what I love about this medium is everything's recorded. It's all out there. There's no changing it. There's no editing it. It's just out there.
Mm-hmm.
So, people can, they can complain. They can call us conspiracy theorists, but that's what his own brother's saying. So take it for what it's worth. That's what his own brother is saying. So we know that Obama shipped off billions of dollars to Iran. We know that he demanded that banks work with Iran, and he threatened them with fines had they not done it. He said, it'd be a real shame if SEC came in and wrote you some real big fines. That would be a real shame. Just the old school, the old school hit job. But we're going to keep covering it, and we're going to take your calls. So you can go ahead and start calling in at 803-258-0154. That's 803-258-0154. We're going to be taking your calls later in the show. This is the Washington Reporter Podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Wohl. Ernie Varitimos here as well. Ernie, I looked outside. It was sunny and nice this morning. Beautiful day here in Orange County, California. Little did I know that we had a storm on the horizon and that who is back in the news. That's right. Stormy Daniels and her bozo attorney, Michael Avenatti, the two buffoons, are back out there making a show, claiming that there's collusion. There's collusion now. Do you hear about this? There's collusion.
Well, when I heard the word collusion between the lawyers and stuff, I was thinking to myself, why are they using the word collusion when what they were really doing is some sort of discovery? And the only thing I could think of is that the mainstream media is, and it was across all the different channels too, using that word collusion purposefully to get that word out into the ether, right? I mean,
right.
You agree?
No, of course. The real headline was not Trump's attorney colluded with Stormy's attorney. The headline was Trump's attorney corresponded with Stormy's or Stephanie Clifford's attorney to keep her in compliance with her NDA that she signed. That's the real headline. They were just chatting. They said, hey, I know she signed this NDA. Somebody's yapping off to the media. We just want to keep her in compliance. They're talking about it. Oh, we could have her go deny it. That way, at least it's better than nothing.
But the point is, under normal circumstances, no one would ever use the word colluded.
No. You're not colluding. You're not colluding. And of course, Michael Avenatti, the bozo attorney who owes the IRS $10 million, apparently. Michael Avenatti says, under no circumstances should Trump's attorney have been talking to Stormy's attorney. What does that mean? Of course they talk. That's what you do in a civil litigation suit. You talk a lot. You go back and forth. You try to settle things. That's how it works. What do you mean?
Stay out of court.
Yeah, exactly. You try to stay out of court, but you don't try to stay out of court if you're Michael Avenatti, who's putting on a big show and trying to just get another 5 minutes of fame, another hit on MSNBC. And so lo and behold, we know now what we know about Michael Avenatti. We know that he owes millions to different people, millions and millions of dollars. And yet CNN's got him on again. MSNBC has got him on again. This guy just doesn't go away, and neither does Stormy. And now he's saying he's got more women lined up and there's more women coming. Stay tuned. This guy has been one flop after the other. You would have thought that CNN learned their lesson. Stormy Daniels herself, one thing Stormy Daniels said to In Touch magazine and to many others? She said very explicitly, I had no affair with Donald Trump. So why can't we believe the women, Ernie? I thought we're supposed to believe the women. Me too, right? Me too. We have to believe the women. That's what she said.
We have to find out if he has Gloria Allred's number.
Yeah, exactly. She signed an affidavit. She said, I'd never slept with the president of the United States, either now or before. So why can't we just believe the women? What's the problem with that? And the other thing is now they're making her look like a victim. And, the big outrage today was that Rudy Giuliani said, listen, this is a woman who sells her body for cash. I don't really take her that seriously or respect her very much. And oh my God, you should have seen the meltdown, the apoplexia on the sets of shows like Morning Joe and Aaron.
But it wasn't Morning Joe. That, as a matter of fact, that was one thing that I noticed. It was really Mika and all the guys on the show. They kept suspiciously quiet while the women just went over the top, especially
ballistic, just ballistic. And you know what the reality is?
It was fun to watch, actually.
Women probably respect porn stars even less than men. That's what they don't get. That's what she was so off base on.
Well, it's opposite world over with the Dems.
That's a theme. Opposites. Everything is inverted. It's flipped. They figure if we take the truth, we flip it around 180 degrees, we have a mirror image, people will believe it because it looks similar, even though it's the opposite. And that is the Hegelian dialectic, paradigm nonsense that these people try to do. And it really doesn't work for anybody who's got half a brain. CNN now has 800,000 viewers on a daily basis. 800,000 viewers.
Not simultaneous, over the entire day.
Over the entire day.
Of which I would say about 750,000 are probably coming from their paid spots in bars and airports and lounges and in hotels and so forth.
Exactly right. Exactly right. In other words, it's not somebody tuning this stuff in in the comfort of their own home. But they think that they're powerful. I mean, as opposed to Alex Jones, who's getting sometimes 15, 20 million people a day throughout the day tuning in. So you have these people and they think that they're important and they're putting on this big show and they think that it's resonating. They think that what they say is going to shape reality. They really do. They really think that what they say is going to materialize. But it never does because nobody cares. Nobody watches. We watch because we're into this stuff and we find it fun and we get a good kick out of the fake news. We think it's funny. Regrettably, we watch it sometimes.
It's painful.
It's painful, but it's our own little, masochistic sort of pleasure. And so we get a kick out of it. But your average person doesn't care. They don't watch CNN. They don't know. You go out, you walk around, you say, hey, who's Aaron Burnett? Nobody knows. Nobody's ever heard. Who's Don Lemon? Nobody knows. Don Lemon, I don't know. Nobody knows. So it's this whole, technique and inversion of reality that these people try to pursue. And we see it again and again. It never materializes. This blue wave that was supposed to take California, take New Jersey, coast to coast, nonstop. It's taken over. Democrats take it. We're getting Trump out of there. It just never happened. It just never happened. Just never happened. So, they can keep it up. They can continue to, hope and pray and try to materialize reality. But it's just not working out. It's just,
CNN is just very well known for trying to shape their own reality around what they're, the narrative that they're trying to paint. And the narrative they're trying to paint with Trump is that he's some kind of buffoon, that he's completely unprepared, that he's a failure, that, all of these pejoratives. So I just went over to the CNN site, right? And there's a headline. It says, Trump picks attitude over prep work. So, and they have a picture of him and Kim Jong-un. And so what they're trying to imply is that he's going to go in there like a gunslinger and just, go off the tip of, off of his hip and try to negotiate something completely, haphazardly. that he's not listening to any of his advisors or anything like that, and he's going to screw everything up. And this is the guy that we have with the finger on the button.
Yeah, no, it's fake news. It's 100% fake news. You know,
Little rocket man.
just fake news.
Fake news.
That's what it is. So, we have a lot of fun here. But so they think that they can continue to materialize reality. It's not working out. Stormy's back. It's going to flop again. But before we wrap up the show and before we take your calls or whatever we end up doing and take your questions in the chat, I need to talk about what Trump is up to as we speak. Been a long week already. Trump's flying up to Canada, to Montreal, to the G7 summit. The allies, our great allies of Germany and France and Canada, they're pissed off because we tariffed them and they're only allowed to tariff us. It would be like, this tariff thing is just so transparently dishonest. This whole tariff debate, the trade debate.
Well. And speaking of that, don't forget that he met with Prime Minister Abe today from Japan, where they were talking, right, I'm sure, right, North Korea and also bilateral trade deals.
Exactly. So you talk about this tariff issue. It would be like if you took somebody out to lunch, you went out with your friends to lunch. Imagine this. You go out with your 5 friends to lunch. You go out twice a week. And you go out and you pay the bill. You pick up the tab. You go out again. You pick up the tab. You go out again. You pick up the tab. And then finally, they show up. And on the 4th time, it's been, you pick up the tab every time. You ask them to pay a little bit of the tab. You don't ask for much. You just say, you guys are going to pay the tip. Oh my gosh, the horror. You don't believe in free trade? Oh my gosh, you're a protectionist. He's a protectionist. He's a mercantilist. This is going to be the end of the world. It's the end of the stock market. It's the end of globalism. That's exactly what we're seeing. They can tariff us, no problem. They can take money, but we can't tariff them back.
For the previous 8 years, the previous administration, everyone got used to us just laying over and giving the United States away to the world.
Yeah,
and they, it's like anything. You get used to something, and it's hard. It's like getting a monkey off your back. You get used to the morphine, and that's what you expect. And now here comes Trump giving them the cold turkey.
Yeah, and it is a cold turkey. I will tell you that. It's fantastic to watch, and they're panicked, and Merkel's up there, and Macron is up there, and Trudeau, and all of these, really soft globalists. And Trump's just going up there, and he's just going to kick some ass. Bottom line, he doesn't care. Oh, they might be offended. He doesn't care. In fact, I was listening to CNN today on the radio, and where Trump is headed next. So he met with Abe. He goes to Canada. Now he's flying to Singapore to meet with Kim Jong-un when he finishes up there. And they were saying that Trump is running the risk of offending Kim Jong-un vis-a-vis Rudy Giuliani's comments that Kim Jong-un got on his hands and knees and begged for a summit. Well, that's what happened. Again, somebody might be offended by the facts, but the facts are the facts. Or as liberals say in their platitudinous way, facts matter. Facts really do matter.
Well, how about this fact? The libs calling Trump a racist, yet what do we have? What have we seen over the past 3 weeks in pardons, for instance?
Sure.
Alice Johnson, D'Souza, and then what was that old boxer? What was his name?
Jack Johnson.
Now, yeah. So it looks like what Trump is doing in a very, what I think a brilliant way. He's exacting these pardons, but with media moguls that are going to then spread that word or that goodwill that Trump is really doing something for their community separately. So you have Kim Kardashian, obviously. I'm sure she's going to do a show on that, right? And I know that with this boxer, there was that was through Sly Stallone, right?
Yep.
And then, of course, D'Souza, he's, one of the biggest directors out there for documentaries, conservative
documentaries. Highest grossing documentary filmmaker ever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Friend of the show. He'd been on the show before, I think a couple of times, actually. Great guy. We're very good with him. Yeah, it's fantastic. So you got the racist thing. That's going to be the next one too. By the way, that's next up in the rotation. We just track these things. It's a rotation. They just go around and around. So that's going to be probably next.
Well, and also what a lot of people don't know is that in the Trump organization, he's probably got. I think he's probably best known for having a very high percentage of minorities and women in executive positions. As a matter of fact, I think like one of the highest executive positions, there is a black woman, in his organization, in
Yeah.
the Trump organization.
And it's not even that he's like trying to play like the Starbucks social justice warrior game either. He just hires the best people. He doesn't really care.
That's right.
What race they are. It's not as if he's, has some diversity hiring program where, you've got to be a certain color to get a certain job. It's just, he doesn't really care. It's just not something he's into. This whole, narrative that he is some, country yokel KKK member who hates black. It's so far from the truth. It's so far from the truth. It's unbelievable. So he's headed to Singapore next. He's going to wrap up. He's going to go kick some ass in Canada. Then he's going to go kick some ass in Singapore. What can we expect in Singapore? I think that's really the $1 million question. The $1 million question. What can we expect in Singapore? Ernie, what do you think?
Well, if you watch CNN, of course, they're saying that he's getting ready to pull out, right? Now, what Trump is saying is that he's not sure whether or not this is going to be, a slam bam, thank you, ma'am type of meeting, or if it's going to go over several. But he has some criteria, right? And either they convince him that they're completely committed to full denuclearization, or he will pull out. But I think that they know that now because he's already set up the stage that he's not fooling around, that he's willing to just pull out if he doesn't think things are going well. And then, of course, North Korea is going to be settled with these just draconian, what do you call them?
The sanctions?
Sanctions. Geez, I had a brain fart there.
Yeah. No, but he's got them. And so Trump said two things today that were very telling. He said, number one, he said, if you hear the words maximum pressure after we finish up, you'll know it didn't go well. On the other hand, if it goes well, I'll invite Kim Jong-un down to Mar-a-Lago and he'll come hang out. That's what he said. And the media said, you can't do that. He's a war criminal, almost as evil as you. You can't invite him there. So it's really, really fascinating. I think
that's the weird thing. It's like the mainstream media almost wants him to fail.
Oh, they do. In fact, even Nicholas Kristof, okay, a guy who is no fan of Trump. He's a New York Times columnist. Nicholas Kristof wrote this morning, surprisingly, the Democrats' foolish move to bet against Trump in North Korea. It's something along those lines is what he named the article. And it was all about why Democrats are so helplessly foolish to be trying to sidetrack this North Korea summit. And that's exactly what they're trying to do. I mean, Nick Kristof is among the biggest anti-Trumpers at the Wall Street editorial board. Okay, I don't care what anybody says, he is. And so, the idea that he's now coming along to Trump's side and saying, wait a second, the Democrats don't like America. But this is what we say constantly. Why does it take a North Korea summit for people to realize that that Democrats really just don't like America? They just don't. They don't like this country very much on average.
Well, what do you think their end game is? Because it doesn't make any sense. If you don't like America, if you're trying to subvert everything that we do, I mean, if you're trying to bring it down, for what? And how is that going to benefit them?
Well, it's going to benefit them because at this stage of the game, anything to remove Trump is what they need. Anything.
So they're willing to sacrifice their own id and ego and face to cut off their nose to spite their face, essentially.
Yes, that's exactly right.
That's more important. It's more important to win against this evil Trump than have America succeed.
Yep, absolutely. That's the way that they're thinking. And, we're going to keep watching it. We're going to keep up with it. We're going to, tell people how it is. I've got one question through the chat on YouTube Live that I think is a good question from Steve. And Steve says, do you think the IG report will be watered down? Rosenstein has had it for 2 weeks. So the IG report it's finished. It has been out for about 3 weeks now. It's been finished. Almost 3 weeks. Tomorrow is going to be 3 weeks. And it's not been leaked. So there's two ways to read into that. The way that I read into it is that whatever it says, it can't be good, because we know that the Democrats leak, right? We know the Democrats are big into leaking. And if it were good for them, they would have leaked it.
Right.
You know what I mean? But somebody has started leaking it. We're getting our first leaks, and those leaks are to NBC News, which we have to take with a grain of salt, of course, fake news, LSD NBC. They said that Comey was insubordinate. That was the only leak we've got. Now, I will say, if that is the most damning part of this report, is that Comey was insubordinate, that is a major win for Comey. I mean, that if that's the worst thing they've got in that report, that is a huge win for Comey, because that's Comey's whole shtick: a higher loyalty. You know, I was insubordinate, but just got a higher loyalty to God and country and truth and ethics. So
he's on the ethics tour right now.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a whole thing. Okay, but the bottom line is that this is their whole MO is the higher loyalty stuff. So I'm saying, if that's the worst thing, if there's nothing more damning than that gets leaked out, then it's going to be a flop. And I've just seen too much of this TikTok. This one's going to be the one. # release the memo. I mean, how many times have we done this and gone through this? And Republicans have failed to produce the goods.
So if we use our opposite world theory, that the total lack of bad news from our side and from the Democrats must mean that it is completely bad for the Democrats.
Right.
So the lack of bad news means that it's all good news for us,
because they haven't gotten in front of it. If it were really bad for them, I think what they would, but they thought that they could manage it. If it were bad but manageable, what they would try to do is sort of get in front of it by leaking little things here and there that weren't that bad. Mm-hmm. That might be what they were trying to do here with this Comey stuff. I can't really tell. But the bottom line is, we'll just have to see. But the fact that it's been, out there it's been done for 3 weeks. What I worry about is that it's going to be heavily redacted or it's going to be watered down. And Trump alluded to that earlier this week. I wouldn't put that past Rosenstein and the goons over at DOJ. I really wouldn't. The other thing you've got to worry about is you got to worry about that because they've done this before. They've done this before. I mean, how many times have we heard Rosenstein's finally going to show the memo, the secret documents that started the Russia investigation to Congress? We've been hearing that for weeks. For weeks. And he goes there and he meets with them, and then he doesn't have the documents. He says, oh, it's just going to be done in 2 weeks. Or he brings something and it's completely redacted, head to toe. It's just blanked out. And so now, just today, NBC News reports that next week, Rosenstein says he's going to bring it to Congress. He's going to have it next week, just one more week, and he'll bring it to them, and it won't be redacted. But we've been hearing this for months now. And he's never come up with the document that started the Russia investigation. Do you know why that is? The reason is it doesn't exist. There is no smoking gun document that whoa, look at that. It just came across my desk, and it turns out, we're going to have to investigate Trump. It doesn't exist. There is no secret document that's redacted, that's out there, that they said, oh my gosh, now that I've seen this piece of paper, we have no choice but to investigate Trump. The document doesn't exist. This document, this is Devin Nunes's big secret. The document that Devin Nunes and Jim Jordan and Matt Gaetz and back in the day, Trey Gowdy have been chasing doesn't exist. There is no magic document that sparked the Russia investigation. That's why week after week, month after month, they go back to Congress. They say they're going to have it next week. They're going, it's too redacted. We can't even read this. It doesn't exist. There is no smoking gun document that shows the collusion. How do I know that? Well, they said that the document came across their desk in July of 2017. I'm sorry, 2016. July of 2016. Well, now we know that they were spying on the Trump campaign vis-a-vis the NSA 702 database and querying that thing back in December of 2015, 8 months before. So this document doesn't exist. That's the big secret. You can keep retweeting these headlines about when they're going to get the document. They're never going to get the document. The document doesn't exist. If they do get something, it's going to be something that was cobbled together that isn't really significant and isn't legitimate, frankly.
Well, so this still brings us back to the very beginning of our show here when and you asked me, what's on my mind, and that's Trey Gowdy going over there and saying that, after whatever he did see, and my understanding is that he didn't actually see all the FBI documents, didn't see the FISA court documents, made the determination that the FBI did everything by the book. I'm still completely flummoxed about this whole thing.
So let's talk about doing things by the book. We'll go in reverse chronological order. Jim Comey leaks a memo, okay, to his professor buddy, who then leaks it to the New York Times, tells him to do it, admits that it was to start a special counsel's investigation. Is that by the book? I don't think so. That happened. Just before that happened, you had Rosenstein write a letter recommending that Trump fire Comey. And then right after he fires Comey, he appoints a special counsel to investigate why the hell he fired Comey. That to me doesn't seem like by the book. How about Jeff Sessions becoming attorney general, getting through confirmation, and then immediately recusing himself? Doesn't seem by the book to me. How about when Comey and Clapper, both of them, gave CNN a reason to publish the dossier news by setting up that fake setup in Trump Tower? Doesn't seem by the book to me. Or how about the time that Brennan was shopping around the dossier to retired Senator Harry Reid, trying to get him to leak it, trying to get him to get it in CNN somehow, unsuccessfully, but still doesn't seem quite by the book. Or how about when Andrew McCabe set up Reince Priebus? He asked to meet with Priebus. He was wearing a wire, and then he reported breaking news. Priebus has been warned. There might be Russians. Or Mike Flynn in the Logan Act. How about when they wiretapped Mike Flynn, an American hero, and then asked him questions that they knew would be trick questions, wrote a 302 that said they didn't think he was lying, and then charged him for lying anyway? Doesn't seem by the book to me. Or the Trump Tower meeting, where they wiretapped Trump Tower, sent in Russians, secret visas, overnighted to Russia. Then Natalia Veselnitskaya gets in, FBI and Fusion GPS working together. FBI reimburses the Clinton campaign the $12.2 million that they paid for that whole operation. Doesn't seem by the book to me. Or how about all the meetings with Halper and the rest of them? Not by the book. And yet, all of that is looked at by Trey Gowdy and looked at by Paul Ryan, and they say, you know what? Looks good to me. Looks kosher. Looks by the book. It's unbelievable. Where do you get that? What am I missing, Ernie? What am I missing?
They say that Trump has the power to declassify everything, and if it really was in his favor, why doesn't he just declassify it?
It's a good question. A good question. I don't know.
I would say that he probably wants these people to hang themselves, and he needs that this sort of investigation to run its course, and that by declassifying it would probably give them a reason then to impeach him as an obstructionist.
Yeah. Again, another one as an obstructionist. Exercising your powers, that's obstruction.
Right.
Exercising constitutional powers, Article 2, that's obstruction. Yeah. No, it's really unbelievable. We're going to stay on top of it. Man, it's already been just about an entire hour here, Ernie. It's been a great show. We've got some good questions. And we're going to be back on Monday. Before we go, anything else? Anything we're missing? Anything that we haven't kept up with?
Jeez, you can guarantee that something's going to happen over this weekend. So that's what I'm looking forward to.
Well, it's going to be great. And next week, we're going to cover the Singapore summit. You name it. In the meantime, you can support us by going to thewashingtonreporter.com, following Ernie at Trader of Futures, myself at Jacob A. Wohl. Subscribe if you're here on YouTube and set notifications. That way you know when the stream and the videos come out. And if you want to donate, you can. WashingtonReporter.com/support. We'll see you guys on Monday.